Good day and welcome to this episode of Technology Enhanced Learning, the show that features brief summaries about research and innovation in the area of computer-based education. I am your host, Judith Rodrigo from the Ateneo de Manila University in the Philippines. Today we have the pleasure of speaking with Dr. Ulrich Hoppe. Dr. Hoppe is a full professor in the area of collaborative learning support systems at the University of Duisburg-Essen in Germany. He has recently completed his active service for UDE, but remains a professor there. He is currently working part-time as a senior scientist in the RIAS Institute-Duisburg. He worked for about 10 years in the area of intelligent user interfaces and cognitive models in human-computer interaction. When he was appointed as a full professor in Duisburg in 1995, he refocused his research on intelligence support in educational systems and distributed collaborative environments. With his Collide research group, he participated in more than 10 European projects on technology-enhanced learning. Ulrich Hoppe was one of the initiators and coordinators of the European Network of Excellence called Kaleidoscope, an initiative that covered the whole field of technology-enhanced learning with all major European research groups. He has also been the coordinator of the EU project Coldex on supporting globally distributed learning communities in science and technology. Dr. Hoppe has also been engaged in national projects on open innovation and competence development in the different industrial sectors. He has been the PI in research training group on user-centered social media funded by the German National Science Foundation between 2015 and 2020. His research is focused on computational techniques for learning and knowledge building. He is particularly interested in combining network analysis techniques with other data mining methods in the study and support of online learning communities. Dr. Hoppe is one of the fellows of the Asia-Pacific Society for Computers in Education. Thank you, Ulrich, for joining us today. Ulrich, of your many projects and publications, I wanted to focus this interview on your recent publication on sequence analysis to determine the functioning of small groups in large online courses. I wanted to start things off by asking, how do we know that a small group is functioning well?
Yes, we are here in the context of collaborative learning. There is a tradition of research on collaborative learning, group learning, particularly also small group learning that goes back to the 90s. And there was a quite influential paper by Meyer, Spada, and Rummel that exactly elaborated on the quality criteria for collaborative learning, that is for quality of group collaboration in the sense of learning. And what these colleagues identified as main factors was communication, joint information processing, that you see that they share, that they exchange information in the group, coordination, interpersonal relationships, and motivation on an individual level, but also how it spreads to the group. These were the factors that they had identified. In the situation that we have studied here, we had to work with, say, reduced conditions that we could look at. We were in a rather big online course, 200, 300 people in the online course, and we enriched this online course with small groups. So this was in the spirit also of enriching MOOCs. We haven't called our course really a MOOC, because that would have had other implications that we were not so much interested in. So the question here was, how well are these small groups working in this big online course? And we came to criteria that had to do with productivity on the one hand, how they were working on writing assignments, so on productive tasks. And we looked at the productivity for the writing assignments and also on the balancedness of contributions in the groups. These were our main criteria that we looked at.
That's so interesting because we are at the end of our semester. And during the semester, we had groups working together. And I see from the outputs and the feedback of the group members how this issue of balance of work becomes a problem in the group dynamics. And so maybe springing off from there, could you tell us what the typical problems are with group work or within groups?
Yeah, I mean, you have, say, a very general issue that is the organization of the work over time. In our case, it was a weekly assignment, groups of 3 to 5. And you could observe that some groups got off the ground quite late. Yeah, that's one very well-known problem. And the other problem is, of course, when you have to deliver, who is actually contributing to what is being delivered? You can say there are these two levels: coordination and then production, hopefully joint cooperative production. And for the production, we have been particularly looking at the balancedness, and for the coordination, we have been looking at the communications particularly in one channel that we had provided that was a forum. This all happened in a Moodle environment. We used the Moodle forum that is part of this environment for coordination as a coordination tool. And we had a specific editor, collaborative editor, Etherpad, for the production. So we could also distinguish these things based on these channels. Now, what a rule of thumb or say plausible common sense reasoning would tell you is for the success of a group, look at the participation, the delays in how they get off the ground, which is of course an important factor. But what we found additionally, and even more importantly, was that coordination, and particularly early coordination, was crucial. So you could have groups that were not very productive in the beginning, but they coordinated well and they still came to good results. And we have, empirically speaking, methodologically speaking, we have used the analysis of sequences of activities in the groups. And based on the sequence analysis, we could then cluster the different working groups that we have seen. And we had practically 3 different clusters that showed certain quite distinct types of behavior. And the successful cluster was really characterized by what I said.
You mentioned sequences. You used sequence analysis to diagnose how well groups are functioning. What were the types of events that you were interested in sequencing?
Yeah, this required some coding. As I said, the information sources were these channels, the forum interactions, and the Etherpad production. And we have, on the one hand, characterized the contributions that the participants made to these different spaces. We have classified them as minor or major contributions. And then we have also particularly, this is on the production level, and for the coordination, we have distinguished, say, prospective coordinating events and retrospective events that were of evaluation type. Often it happened that somebody had written something to the Etherpad space and then was asking the group, look, I have just inserted that. What do you think? Do you want to change? Can we go on? So often these things were intertwined and connected in specific ways. And then we also introduced a specific token that signaled inactivity over more than 24 hours. So inactivity was also an action token in a way in our stream of actions. And the sequence analysis that we applied was practically about determining the the similarity between working sequences, whole working sequences of different groups, instances of groups. And the technique that we used indeed stems from bioinformatics. It's used to compare DNA sequences. So you take your sequence as if it were a DNA sequence and look how similar it is to another sequence. So we have, by the way, not been looking for patterns. This is something that one could also do. We were not digging for patterns, but we were just looking for similarity of the sequences as if they were DNAs. Yeah? And this gave us a similarity measure. And from this similarity measure, we could calculate this similarity matrix, which allowed for the clustering. And this clustering gave us these groups with the specific characteristics that were quite distinguishable.
Thank you. That's very interesting. So I think my next question really has to do with implications for classroom practice. So when a teacher notices a group that's not functioning well, maybe the workload is not balanced, or maybe the group has been inactive for a while, what are some of the strategies that they can use to correct these behaviors that aren't quite productive?
Yeah. What we did is, in first place, we used our results to generate information that was fed into the Moodle environment. I mean, you could feed that also into a teacher dashboard and mark for the teacher the groups that are, say, most at risk in not achieving well, and why? Because of the missing coordination or because of the high imbalance. And then teachers may also directly communicate this to the groups and discuss that with the groups.
Thank you. I'd like to end with a general question that taps into your experience as a senior researcher. Is there some advice you can share with our young researchers who are in the process of growing their careers, the people who are just starting out, finding their legs, finding their way in the community? Is there some advice you can give them?
Yeah, what comes to my mind is the recent early career workshop that we had at the last ICCE conference. I have seen some statements and heard also statements of some of these early career workshop participants. And what I took from that was that many of the young researchers are quite early on targeting these, say, measurable key performance indicators to do with citation indices, journal reputation, so publish in journals with high reputation, etc., which is all good. This is not bad. But I mean, in pedagogy, in education, we distinguish extrinsic and intrinsic motivation. And we know that intrinsic motivation is really dear to us. And extrinsic motivation is more instrumental. And with all these targets, we are on the extrinsic side. I mean, the citation indices, etc. So in first place, I plead for really activating intrinsic motivation, knowing what I'm really striving for, what I want to bring to the world. And I think that is something that the young researchers should be driven by. And then secondary, they should also have a look at that. I mean, regarding the practices, I have mentioned journals as being very important. How about conferences? We have gone through a very difficult period with conferences on the one hand. On the other hand, we have seen a lot of experimentation now with online formats in conferences, which hopefully will enrich us also in the future. So I really would encourage young people to go to conferences, because what you do at conferences is community building, and you should see yourself as part of a community, and I would like to add an international, worldwide community. That's a very big chance. Don't miss miss out on that chance. Very important. That's I think my main comment in that regard.
Thank you so much, Ulrich. I agree with you 100%, especially on your point about trying to attend conferences and using that as an opportunity to build your linkages and to become part of a community, and not just, being part of a conference is more than just presenting your work and leaving, but it's actually having conversations with your colleagues and making friends. So I hope
network.
Yes, go ahead, please.
It's about networking, and not only in this functional sense. It's about making friends, as you say, and being personally connected also, and that's really so rewarding in these international communities that we have.
True. And I hope that the people who watch this video and listen to the podcast will be inspired to join us in ICCE one of these days.
Let's hope so. Yes.
All right. So thank you so much, Ulrich.
Thank you.
Have a good day.
Same to you. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.